Writing a family history can be tough. But if you think writing the story is challenging, wait until you start editing it. Self-editing is one of the most crucial parts in the process of writing a family history, but it can be tricky to know where to start. Join me as I walk you through the editing a family history story process using only yourself. Let's see if we can make your story look and sound more compelling. Howdy everyone, welcome to Tiny Tip Tuesday. I'm Devin Noel Lee, a published family history author, and I'm here to help you learn how to quickly write non-boring family histories. There are a number of problems that you will face when you review your book. The first is lack of structure. Many times people will try to get a beginning, middle, end if they're a creative writer. If they're a family historian who's written in chronological order, there is a structure, but it's not the best one available. So in self-editing, we will look for the lack of structure or an insufficient structure to tell a non-boring family history. Another challenge you will face while you're editing your story is it doesn't feel correct or it doesn't sound correct when you read it. And so you'll be looking for those problems and edit to improve them. Another problem that you will look for is concepts and stories aren't fully fleshed out. They're there, but they're really lacking the depth to make someone understand what's happening, or it has depth, but it's not organized so that it flows and your reader is not left going, huh? All of these problems lead to boring family histories. And remember, we don't want boring family histories. We're not trying to be writing award-winning authors. Well, maybe somebody of you are, but we're writing to share, to get connection going in our families. So what can we do? Start by taking a break. After you've worked so hard to create a draft, step away. Let the draft sit and come back later. Once you have a break, it's time to dive back in. So start by reading your story aloud. This trick helps you catch awkward phrasing, repetitive words, or remember the story doesn't make a lot of sense. It's not really fleshed out. Reading it aloud helps you catch those mistakes. Also pay attention to your word choice. Are there any words that are unnecessary, difficult to pronounce or process? In fact, this is one time, if you haven't done it already, you might want to consider a pronunciation guide. Also consider the audience that you're writing towards. Remember, we're in the drafting, editing phase, so it's time to think, who is this book for? Do they like highfalutin $10 words, as the expression goes? Or do they like something a little more simple? Know your audience, review your words, and as you're reading it out loud, consider, would Uncle Joe enjoy this story? Or is it written for my little niece, Sarah? You really will be surprised how much easier it is to spot words when you hear the words. If you're unsure where to begin with flow and style, be sure to check out my other video linked in the description below on making your family history story make sense. Next, you're going to move on to copy editing. This is where you really get into the nitty-gritty of syntax. Copy editing is where you go through your draft word by word looking for mechanical errors. Things like spelling, punctuation, syntax, and word choice. You'll ask yourself, am I using too much jargon? Or maybe your punctuation's a little wild. If you want a more in-depth look at how to tackle jargon, I have a video on how to make my story make sense, which I just mentioned, and the video is linked in the description box below. You also want to check your passive voices. And again, I have a video about that in the description box. Once your individual words are in tip-top shape, it's time for you to do line editing. You may be thinking, what? Line editing? Copy editing? Isn't all the same? Remember, copy is about the individual words. Line editing is how the words all fit together. This is where you're going to start looking to see if you're repeating names and pronouns over and over. And sure enough, I have 2 videos to talk about this. The first is how to not use your ancestor's name over and over and over again, and instead using some other strategies that I learned when I was in journalism. Additionally, we talk about the pronoun game and not to overuse pronouns in a story, especially if it has multiple individuals, because very soon you won't know who you're talking about. So be sure to check the link for those videos in the description box below. The next part of line editing is asking whether every paragraph serves a purpose. This phase can really cut down on unnecessary verbosity. Be surgical in how you're removing paragraphs. If it is not helping move the narrative and it's just fluff that you could do without, then take it out. Your reader doesn't want to be bogged down in details, so make sure that you are striving for clarity in as few as words as possible, but giving it enough depth you paint the picture of your ancestors' world. Before you call it a day as part of line editing, make sure your ending is solid. No one wants to leave their readers hanging. I mean, sure, there's something about cliffhangers, but we're writing family histories. Nobody really wants a cliffhanger. They want to know how the story ends. So take a moment to check to see if you have tied up all the loose ends in your stories. If not, revisit your final paragraphs and make sure they're as strong as possible. When you're done with your own edits, it's time to bring in a second opinion, but not necessarily a professional. You want someone you trust from your family, a writer circle, a genealogical society, or a friend who loves editing for fun. There are people like that exist. The non-professional editing should offer a fresh pair of eyes that will always catch things you've missed, and not just a misspelled word and a comma error. Their input can really sharpen your story and highlight areas that might need a little more attention. Editing your family history is an essential part of the writing process. Taking the time to do it right can make all the difference between a story that falls flat and one that truly resonates and builds connection with your loved ones. So take these tips, dive back into your draft, and make it shine. What other tiny tips do you have that I should feature on this channel? Let me know in the comments below.